Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Brew with Mike Bruesewitz. Mike, Wisconsin just lost to Oklahoma, I believe 84-83. What were your thoughts?
Overall, I thought it was a good performance. Oklahoma's got a good team. They got a bunch of new transfers as well. I can't remember the name of the head coach, but he was the guy who was at Loyola Chicago.
Yeah, Porter Moser.
Porter Moser. So yeah, he's got a good team down there. He brought in a bunch of high-level recruits, transfers, and I think they got a good team. I think they'll make some noise in the SEC. And just kind of looking at what Wisconsin had, it's a preseason game, so there's a lot of small things, a lot of details, and usually you don't have these high-level, very intense preseason games, and this was like Thanksgiving tournament style game, which was great to see, especially early, one that doesn't count. So I think they're going to get a ton of great film from it and move forward.
Yeah, so we can break down some of the players to start. Obviously, I've been hyping up Nolan Winter in our conversations and talking about how I think he's going to be a potential first-round pick. Yesterday or Saturday? No, that was Friday. Friday was not great for my for my prediction. It's just one game, it's just one game, and you can't take away too much from it. But I believe he was 5 of 14 from the field. I'm pulling that off the top of my head. Pardon me if I'm wrong, but 5 of 14. I did like one thing that I saw from him. He had a pump fake, drove and put up like a runner from about 12 feet away, and it went in. I'm like, that's pretty good for a 7-footer to be able to do that, or close to. But what does concern me was there was a play where he got blocked like 3 times in one play, where he got the ball, swatted, got it, put it back up, and I think it was actually by a kid from Wisconsin who was blocking him there. And
Muhammad was the kid. Or was a different one?
I think it might have been a different one. I could be wrong, but it was just the eye test. I don't know. I'm not going to back down from my prediction, but we're going to have to see some change. We're going to have to see some change from that performance. And perhaps I don't want to get too sensationalized or too caught up in the moment, but perhaps it's maybe not this year, but maybe the next year. But what did you see from Nolan Winter?
So I actually took quite a few notes on what Nolan had done. So obviously he came in with a lot of hype. So teams are going to obviously look at that and say, hey, he's the guy we got to stop. So he's going to get teams' best big defender, as well as teams are going to focus on him a little bit more. The biggest things I saw with him is actually just more physically right now. Everybody talks so much about, how he put on a bunch of weight, and he looks physically different, right? Last season he was a little bit more wiry strong. Now he's a little bit thicker in the trunk. Shoulders are a little bit more built out. One thing I really noticed with him is I watched a little bit of film of him last year, and at the end of the year, his play level was much lower. So he was able to drop his hips and be in a much more stout position. This year, especially early, I've noticed that he has some high hips again. He's a taller guy, so he's got to work on his play level. And the things I really did like from him was in his screen and roll game, he wasn't overly physical. He wasn't setting super, punishing screens. He was, being in the way, and he was, in the right position. But, and then also out of his role, he was a little bit slower out of his role than I would like for him to be. So that's just more of him sitting down, being in more of an athletic stance, making sure he hits guys. And then as soon as he hits, he's got to really explode off of that inside foot and get to the rim off his roll. And he was, he had a few balls knocked away from him on rolls that he's got to be able to clear space to give the passer a better angle for him. And then, his lift was just a little bit off. He had an air ball from the top of the key. He had a very nice pick and pop where he was short on it. Both of his free throws he was short on. So I think some of his stuff is just, his release point is a little bit high right now, and his hips are just a little bit high. And I think if he gets his weight underneath him, if he gets his hips underneath him, all that stuff will work itself out. And this is the first time he's going against higher level competition this season with this new weight. He's been going against the bigs in practice, but it just looks a little bit different once you turn the lights on. And I think for him, the coaches are going to see that. They're going to break down film. They're going to help him with that, and hopefully he can right that ship. He still was in the correct position a lot of the times. He did dunk the basketball once on an and one on a nice out of bounds play. So for me, it's more about him dropping his level and being more physical. And those things are very, very normal for preseason games to look at and be like, hey, we got to do this differently. And I think when they come out against Platteville here in the next couple of days, you should see that.
Well, I hope so. He better just dominate Platteville. But that was a really good breakdown, Mike. I appreciate that. That was good. Yeah, he was 5 of 13 in that game, and solely off the eye test. I'm more basing off what I saw in the highlights. It doesn't look like he's there quite yet, but things could change things could change very, very quickly. We saw him look like a different player from the beginning of last season to the end of last season. So yeah, if he can fix a few things, perhaps he can be what I think he could be. But also, if he's not what I think he could potentially be, that will nuke Wisconsin's potential and what I think for them. Because I'm pretty bullish on Wisconsin, and if he isn't that much better than he was last year, and we don't know yet, time will tell. But if he isn't much better than last year, their ceiling's going to be limited. They'll be a good NCAA tournament team, but I'm thinking this team has the potential to be like a 3 seed, just like they were last year. But yeah, I mean, if you want to bounce off of that at all, but I was also thinking.
Oh yeah,
we'll go for it.
Oh no, so I agree with you on that. They kind of go like, you can see the 2 guards that they have are going to be really high level, and Rapp looks like a big time get out of the portal, but it's really going to come down to how dominant Winter can be down there, and he dominate those bigs in the Big Ten and the conference play and out of conference as well. It's really going to go with him, and for me, it's just, like I said before, it's him figuring out how to play with this new weight too, because it's not just so much like, oh, I put on weight. It's like, okay, how do I use it to my advantage? And he's going to figure that out. I think he's a smart guy. He's high level, has pretty high IQ, and what he did last year, he was able to figure out how to deal with length and size, and now he has the length and size, and now he's got to figure out how to use that to his advantage.
Yeah. And then kind of looking at some of the other players, Blackwell had a really nice game, 20 points, 19 from Boyd. You know what? Something I noticed about Boyd, finally going to watch him in a Badger uniform that's not in the red-white scrimmage. What are with left-handed players being so left-hand dominant? It's like their identity. You go back to Manu Ginobili. You go to Manu Ginobili, like that man loved his left hand. I love Manu, but that man loved his left hand. And then you go more recently, just at Marquette, they had Tyler Kolek and they had Cam Jones, 2 guys who aren't that athletic, 2 guys that aren't that lengthy. Cam Jones is like 6'4", but they're not athletic. They were just so crafty, and they only had one hand, so they weren't athletic, and they had one hand, and somehow they were all Americans. It's actually impressive what they could do, what they got out of with their lack of athleticism and just a lack of a right hand. It's insane to me. And I kind of noticed that with Nick Boyd a little bit. Boyd's more athletic. He's a burner, but there was a play where he easily could have put up a right-handed layup, and the man contorted his body and found a way to use his left. I don't know if he got fouled or he got blocked on the play, but I was like, what is it? You ever notice that? A lot of left-handed ball players love their left hand. They do not want to go to their right at all.
So there is actually a distinct advantage to being a left-handed player. If you know anything about sports psychology, the action of sports, it's all about repetition and habits. And majority of the human beings in the world are right-handed. So when you practice, you're actually getting a visual practice of dealing with right-handed movements. So that's why guys who are left-handed, it's a smaller percentage of the population. It's a smaller percentage of players are left-hand dominant. Lefties have a distinct advantage. It doesn't matter what you say. Hey, he's left-handed. Hey, he's left-handed. The movement patterns of left-handed guys just look different. It's the complete mirror opposite of what you have as a regular player. So that's why guys who are left-handed generally have an advantage over right-handed players, and why they are so left-hand dominant, because when they were growing up, man, they were able to get to that left hand at will. Nobody would stop it, even if you had coaches saying, hey, he's left-handed, turn it away. Nope, no problem. He still would find a way to get to it. And Nick Boyd is super athletic, and The play you were talking about, I think it was in a transition where he ended up doing a backhand, left-handed finish, super tough finish. He could have quick finished with his right hand much easier. I wholeheartedly agree. He took the degree of difficulty to the 10, but he found his way in. And, for me, it's really interesting because actually John Blackwell is a very left-hand driver. A lot of his moves he sets up, his right to left cross is lethal, and he does a great job, especially coming out of the corner and lifting out of the corner on handoffs. He does a great job of coming out of the corner and driving that left hand baseline and rejecting that handoff. And he did that so much last year. It was one of his best moves he had. I think he probably got about 6 to 8 points a game, either getting to the free throw line because guys would foul him or just finishing. So it'll be really interesting this year because they have two guys at the guard position that are really dominant going to their left. I think that'll actually be an advantage. It'll just be interesting to see how teams scout Nick Boyd now. They're seeing how athletic he is. They're seeing how dominant he is. He's getting downhill. Couple things for him adjustment-wise. He needs to play off of 2 feet a little bit more. He's so fast that he feels like he can get there without, having to play off of 2 feet. But I think if he actually gets downhill, comes to a jump stop, he's going to get a lot more fouls. And he'll also see some more passes. Today he only had 3 assists, but he had the ball in his hand a lot. So for me, I would like to see him slow down a little bit more and maybe find some of those rolls, especially out of that, because he gets into the paint so easily. Like out of ball screens, he's doing a great job of manipulating guys, pushing them down, and then actually getting the advantage out of ball screens. But he just needs to kind of slow down just a half a step and be a little bit more of a change of pace guard, not just I'm so fast you can't deal with me. If he's able to go from, second gear to fourth gear to third gear to fifth gear, it makes him even more lethal. So we'll see what happens with him. But overall, I thought he had a good game. And yeah, I enjoyed watching him push the pace for them.
Yeah, so let's talk about what's concerning with this team right now. They shot horribly in the red-white scrimmage. Both teams, I don't have the numbers, but I think it was both in the teams potentially from 3. I could be off, but I think it was roughly around there. And in this game, they shot 10 to 31 from 3. And you look at Blackwell, 1 of 4 from 3. Boyd, 1 of 6 from 3. Winter, 0 of 2 from 3. I was talking about this with a coworker yesterday, and he made a good point. Like, how many guys do we know for sure are going to shoot the ball really well this year? I would say Rapp, and I'm pretty confident about Rhodey. But if you look at Blackwell, he was 32%. As Nolan Winter, I think he shot a decent percentage last year. In this bigger role, can we truly expect him to knock down 35 to 40% of his threes? I don't know. Time will tell. But let's say Blackwell shoots relatively the same that he did last year at like 32%. Boyd, I shot 35% maybe for San Diego State last year. Like, what if that goes down a little bit? And what if Winter's percentage goes down? You can play the what if game, but for the point I'm making is I'm pretty confident right now in Rapp and Rhodey shooting the ball, and I'm not 100% sure what it's going to look like for the others. Like, it could be one of those things where this guy can shoot and he shoots well in practice, but when the bright lights are on, his percentage isn't that good. So that's one concern I have is how good of a shooting team is this going to be? I really have no clue. The first 2 games, scrimmage and this exhibition, poor shooting. And then the other thing is obviously the defense. Greg Gard touched on this, but the defense really needs to tighten up. Gave up 84 points. And I did like that they forced a lot of turnovers. That I think that's a big, actually, pro was 16 turnovers for Oklahoma to Wisconsin 7. The fact that they're playing an exhibition in October and they're only turning the ball over 7 times is a really good sign when they're scoring in the 80s. That's really good. But yeah, two of my concerns is one, I don't know how good of a shooting team this will be, and that's another thing that could mess up the potential that I have in mind for this Wisconsin team. And then the other one is they got to get tougher in defense.
So yeah, if you look at it from last year's team, they're trying to bring back some different shooting from guys. The bigs position, they had two bigs that shot the ball pretty well. From the guard position, they're trying to find out who can shoot from them. In terms of who I think is going to be shooters for them this year, obviously Rapp is going to be one. Like I said, my Keaton Nankiville comparison is just aging beautifully. It's funny. I think Janicki is going to be a big time shooter for them. He knocked down a couple on the left wing for them, coming off of handoffs. And I think, it depends. I think Nolan Winter, I think he can be a good shooter. The big thing for him is, like I talked about earlier, is his hips and his release were just a little bit not in sync. He was very straight up and down, and then his release, he didn't have his hips underneath him. But, I remember last year, he has a little bit of a flatter shot. So if he can get that arc up a little bit, I think he'll become, a high level shooter. He has good form, good rotation on the basketball. The other one is Belauskas. I was pleasantly surprised. He was the first big off the bench. Came in, knocked a three, has good form, looks like a typical Lithuanian bruiser. I've played against guys that look exactly like him. The way he moves, the way he runs. If you want to go on YouTube and look up the LKL, it's the top professional league in Lithuania. You're going to see like 6 of him on the court at once. But he knows he looks like he's going to be a pretty good asset for them coming off the bench. Janicki coming off and shooting. And it might not be a big thing for them. They're an athletic team. They're a team, they got 2 guards that are really downhill dominant, getting in the paint. And that might just be their identity. It might not be a high level, high percentage 3-point shooting team. They might get some good looks just off of those 2 guards being so downhill dominant and shooting free throws. And I think the team will adjust as that goes too. Coach Guard does do a great job of making adjustments with his team and being like, okay, this is what our team is dominant at. This is what our team's strengths are. Let's try and play to those as much as we can. And I think time will tell. Like you said, some of the shooting stuff is going to come and go. But as the team goes, Coach Guard, I think, has a really good handle of what he wants to do. And he did a great job with a few different actions of trying to find wrap shots. One of the biggest things I saw during the games, the action that's going to be really hard for a lot of teams to guard is a Spanish pick and roll with Boyd as the ball handler and Ethan Happ as the back screener. So what happens is there's Boyd's on the top. He's coming off a ball screen from Nolan Winter, and then Rapp comes and sets a back screen on Winter's man and then pops out. It's a really difficult action to guard, especially with 2 bigs. And I think that's going to be one of their bread and butter plays that this season that you're going to see a lot of action with. And we'll see what happens with them shooting. I don't think it's the end world if they're not a great shooting team. They have a lot of size and they have a lot of athleticism at the guard position, and they can find wins and find an identity for that.
Yeah, and I will say that Nick Boyd is a guy who can't get hurt. If he gets hurt, this team will tank, because I don't see anyone else who can really play that point guard spot at a super high level. I mean, you could plug in Rhodey perhaps, and he can do some ball handling, and he's a good passer, or John Blackwell. But Boyd is a true point guard who I believe can create for himself, create for others. And I'm a Trayvon Jackson guy. I like guys who can get to the paint and create for themselves or for others. So I think he's the guy on this team who is probably the most irreplaceable guy.
Yeah, he definitely stirs the drink for them. He definitely, for him, his style to play is definitely going to, stir the drink for them. It's definitely going to be an identity piece for them. And hopefully he can find his footing. He had a great showing at the red-white scrimmage. Now he saw some different length. That was one thing I really noticed about Oklahoma is they got a lot of size there. They're really lanky at a lot of positions, and then their two guards were solid. So
and they have Nigel Pack still, the guard, who's been around for 40 years. I can't believe he's still in college basketball. So he's a good player.
He was tough. I don't know how old he is, but especially in that second half, how he was. Wisconsin had a hard time with that. And we'll see, they're going to go over the film. I noticed a lot on their ball screen defense. They weren't able to get over ball screens super effectively. A big thing when you're dealing with ball screen defense is you got to be able to jump into the defense or jump into the offensive player's hip and then get over that ball screen. And Rhodey had a little bit of a difficult time. I thought Carrington did a great job on him. He got caught in one with the and one, which may or may not have been a foul. And I thought Janicki, actually, your guy Janicki, had the most energy and looked the best defensively for me in terms of just activity and his ability to navigate ball screens, which I think is going to be invaluable for him. And he's going to find himself in a lot of minutes because of that.
So I think that's a pretty good recap. I think before we can do our last segment here, but just for people to have context, I looked it up. Kamari McGee was nearly 46% from three on 2.3 attempts per game. Crowell shot 41.6%. Tanjay 38.8%. So your top three shooters. And then Nolan Winter shot 35.8% from three. And all his looks, and Crowell too, wide open threes. A lot of them on kickouts, a lot of them on pick and pop. So those are wide open threes. Now that he's going to be one of the feature guys, can he keep that percentage at 35.8? I sure hope so. I hope, for the sake of the team, I hope he can. But yeah, Blackwell was a 32.2% guy. And yeah, so shooting is a big question mark. Time will tell. But yeah, Mike, want to go into this last segment and then we'll wrap it up?
Yeah, sounds good. So for this segment, we have our Joe's questions for the pros. So the idea is I've played basketball professionally for quite a long time now, longer than I maybe care to say, 13 years. And I've had a lot of experiences. I understand the dynamic of professional basketball to the nth degree. But I know a lot of people that have not necessarily had the experiences I have or been in the circles that I have are always curious about like how things work. What's the inner workings? What does an actual career look like? What do you do? So my first question for Matt is now we're going to do a little bit of an imagination here. All right. So Matt, now you just finished your career as a Badger. You played all 4 years. You went to 4 tournaments. Your senior year, you were a very, very solid role player on a winning team, top 25 team in the NCAA on a high major program. Obviously, Wisconsin is, a Power 5 conference school and very well regarded in the worlds of actual professional basketball. A lot of professional teams know who Wisconsin is, the style that they play, the brand that they play. You averaged 8 points a game, about 5 rebounds, and you went to the tournament all 4 years. So do you know what your next move is? You just finished your career. You just finished your last game in college. You've taken your time, your little week off to have a good time, enjoy. But do you know what your next step in securing a job at the next level looks like?
I would say securing an agent is probably the most important thing. I got to get someone advocating on my behalf because I'm not getting drafted. I need to find a spot overseas. I need to try to play in the summer league, and I need to try to see if I can potentially get a tryout for a G League team. So that would be my answer, is get an agent would be the first thing. And I need to decide if I'm going to graduate or not, or if I'm going to just go pro right away. So, but yeah.
I understand exactly what you're saying. So you are spot on, Matt. So your first thing is your agent is super, super important in what you want to do. And then obviously, like you said, trying to get into the summer league, that can add some value to yourself. But in terms of your agent, so now you have that kind of idea. Do you have any idea what you want to look for in an agent, how to ask for an agent, where you go for that? You got any clues?
I would get the yellow pages out.
Yellow pages out. I like that.
I would have to probably. I played 4 years at Wisconsin, so I probably have some connections to other players who have played pro. Hopefully, my coaching staff is somewhat willing to help out. I don't know if your head coach was super willing to help you out, but hopefully, my coaches are willing to guide me, and hopefully, I can get some guidance from former teammates.
So that is excellent. You have actually passed this test with flying colors. You know quite a bit, Matt. So that was what I did. When I was coming out of school, I asked former guys who had played at Wisconsin. I also had a very large network of professional players just from my time as a high-level player. That's kind of one of the things that happens when you're in college, especially at a high major program. You're eventually going to run into professionals at open gyms, workouts, wherever. So you want to hit those guys up. Now, a couple of things that I will add in is when you're looking for an agent, you got to make sure you find an agent that will work for you. It's kind of the idea of like, hey, I could go to a really big agency that has really, really good players. And that's usually the first question that guys ask is, well, who's on your roster? And if they see names that they recognize, like, oh, he must be a good agent, I should go with him. The problem being is if you're not as good as those guys, he's not going to try and get you the jobs that you want to get. He's going to try and go get those other guys' jobs first, and you're further down the list. So I always tell guys, especially coming out of school, is unless you're got all Big Ten, all conference honors, all American honors, you were leading your team or your conference in top 10 in scoring, rebounding, whatever, you have some accolades, go find an agent that's going to do all the work for you. Don't go find an agent that has the biggest name. Go find somebody that is a little bit smaller, has a smaller Rolodex, and be one of the best players on their roster. Because what happens then is they're going to try and get you the best jobs, because if you're their best player, you're going to be able to make them the most money. So they're going to be like, oh, he's my meal ticket. So if the better I do for him, the more money he will make. So it's one of those things. And then the other thing is most people say, my last question for you today, where do you think you would want to go and play? Everybody says, oh, I'm going to go play overseas. Now, what does overseas basketball look like for you?
Oof. Well, for me, I would like to stay in America. I would take the G League, even though it's not as good of a check, especially when you started the D League. The checks were terrible there. Now it's gotten a little bit better. But yeah, so if I'm playing overseas, I'd like to play in Sweden or Italy. I want to go somewhere cool with good food and that's safe. I don't want to be a part of anything that's not even the slightest bit dangerous.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, interesting. All right. So you kind of understand that most people understand that overseas basketball generally means like European basketball, right?
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. Europe has a lot of prestige. There is some good basketball that is being played over there. There's a lot of countries you can travel. It's cool. Depending on who you are and what your play style is, there is basketball everywhere. And your style is definitely what you have to try and promote. And that's where you have an agent that should understand your style of basketball. Hey, I'm a really good scorer. Hey, I'm a kind of a big dude who's more of a role player. And if that's the things you're looking for in a job, that's what you got to go and find. So that's what I got for pros versus Joes.
I like
continue this segment.
Yeah, this is good.
Next time.
This is a really good behind the curtain. I like this. And I just looked up the travel advisories for each country I chose. They're level 2s, exercise increased caution. So, both are relatively safe. But yeah, that'd be my biggest thing. So, but no, Mike, a lot of fun talking with you. We will be back soon. Thank you very much for making it to the end of this episode, and we will see you soon.